Welcome back. Hardly a year after President Cyril Ramaphosa appointed a high-level review panel to investigate the state security agency, another controversy has hit the department. Well, according to weekend media reports, Minister in the portfolio, Dipuo Letsatsi Duba, has written to the President about just how close protection was provided to leaders of the ANC Youth League, contravening its mandate. She also accuses the former Director General, Thulani Dlomo, of employing 40 agents without approval. The agency has been plagued by allegations of political interference and corruption over the years. And to discuss this further via Skype, we're now joined by Murray Hunter. He's a spokesperson for Right to Know. A very good morning to you, Murray. Thank you so much for joining us and welcome to Morning Live. Are you at all surprised by these allegations?
Unfortunately not. We've seen two major trends over years at the State Security Agency, and the first is abuse of public funds and misuse of public funds, and the second is inappropriate political activity. And these are two things that are really coming to the front in the latest admission from the Minister. Under the Zoom administration particularly, we saw an increasing use of the State Security Agency for political or factional purposes. And it's alleged, at least by the Minister herself, that the providing of security services to ANC Youth League leaders was an example of that factional misuse.
I mean, how does a scandal like this impact on the credibility and the reputation of the agency, which is already being tainted by corruption?
Well, yes, I think the answer to that question depends on the extent to which you believe that the agency has credibility left to squander. And that's not just being unkind. Unfortunately, we saw the presidency obviously having to institute a high-level panel to investigate serious allegations and failings at the State Security Agency last year. And for us, we would want to see the findings of that panel finally released, and we would be calling on the presidency to release those findings, because this is really what's required to rebuild the credibility of the agency and to actually ensure that the agency is able to do its job, is for that full transparency to come out, for clarity on the public to see how the recommendations of that investigation is being implemented, and to ensure that we actually see some kind of change.
Murray, what would you say are some of the factors that lead to the current state of the State Security Agency? What has brought the agency to this far and to this level?
I think that the single biggest problem we've seen is a total lack of transparency. So obviously, the State Security Agency has some right to confidential on legitimately confidential matters, but we've seen consistent critiques from watchdog bodies, from civil society bodies, around the fact that there is no transparency whatsoever about what's going on there, and that secrecy has really allowed abuses like this to happen. The second is much tighter financial controls, and then the third is much tighter oversight, and that's really what's been lacking, to ensure that the agency isn't being abused for political purposes.
You know, after her appointment, the minister pledged to restore the credibility and the integrity of the country's intelligence services and public confidence in this organization. How has she been faring? How has her performance been?
Well, it's very difficult to say without there being more transparency about what has been happening and regular updates to the public. Obviously, signs like this are positive. It means that the minister has been proactive in certain cases, is taking action on the abuses, which is unfortunately more than can be said for her predecessor at times. But what we would really need to see again is the president's review panel into state security was a very positive step, but it's only a meaningful step when we see those findings, when those findings are made available to the public.
And where should she lavish her focus on, particularly in cleaning up the agency?
It would be around transparency, around reporting back to the public to say, these are the findings we've made, these are the steps we're taking. And in particular, I think that there has been an important focus on rooting out corruption, fraud, misuse of funds in the agency. But going forward, I think we would need to see more concrete steps taken that the public can really evaluate around ensuring that the agency's powers and resources are not being used for political or factional purposes. And of course, that is especially important given that 2019 we will see national and provincial elections, and a big part of ensuring that those elections are not being subject to any kind of illegitimate political activities, to ensure that the security agencies are not in any way abusing their powers.
And speaking of which, and I mean, when the high-level panel was introduced and appointed, there was mixed reaction on the formation of members of the panel. What's your stance on this?
This is not something that we've raised. I think obviously we really can only say whether this panel has done its job or not at the point at which those findings are reviewed, at the point at which the presidency releases those findings, because we understand that they're before the presidency. But it was a large and representative panel, and actually we can only really say whether it did its job or not at the point at which we see that report.
And what will it take to fully restore the credibility and the integrity of this agency?
So I think there's three things. The first is new commitments to transparency, to say from the agency's side, we are going to start reporting back regularly to the public on big, broad things. So it's not talking about releasing sensitive information, but about appearing to the public to say, these are the 5 things that we believe are priorities for us. These are the 5 things we're going to be working on. The second will be around ensuring that there's accountable leadership. So, the former Director General, Arthur Fraser, was moved sideways under serious allegations of corruption and abuse of power. We would want to see a very accountable and transparent leadership. And then the third is around those oversight bodies. So we would want to see Parliament, the Inspector General of Intelligence, and any other oversight bodies taking the public into its confidence to really say, these are the things that we're working on, these are our findings, and these are the steps we're taking to ensure that the credibility and integrity of this agency is being addressed.
And I would imagine that would be very difficult trade-offs to make. I mean, in trying to change some of the practices that have become so deeply entrenched in the organization in the past decade or so. So are we likely to see any tangible changes in the not-so-distant future?
Unfortunately, that is really, at this point, that opportunity exists, but it requires, as you said, those difficult choices to be made. So we would want to see the Minister, President Ramaphosa, and Parliament's Intelligence Committee actually stepping up. And that requires them, for example, to release the findings of the review panel that sat last year to investigate state security. It requires them to take a lot more of a public-facing approach, because ultimately the State Security Agency is ultimately a body that exists to serve the public. And it really is the public's voice that's been missing in this. And we can really only hope to see positive change at the point at which the public is informed of what's happening and the public is taken into the confidence of the president.
And there's also been calls for the review panel to hold deliberations in public. What do you make of that? Do you think it's a good idea?
We definitely think that a more public process would have been positive. Our understanding, according to news reports, is that the panel completed its work and has handed its work to the president. So unfortunately, that opportunity has been missed. And we will have to settle at this point for ensuring that the public is able to read the findings of the panel and make its own responses, to say either we're very happy with this work or we believe things are missed. Because we must remember once again that one of the scandals was obviously that the State Security Agency was using its powers to spy on political operatives, to spy on elected leaders and government officials, journalists. But let us remember that we as the public, 56 million people, we have often had our own private information processed. We might ourselves be the subject of illegal spying by the State Security Agency. And so this is not just about politically powerful people, but it's actually about ordinary citizens and the extent to which our rights might have been abused as well.
You know, Maureen, organizations like yours are hardwired to, to sort of distrust the intelligence services. So are you likely to accept the outcome of the review panel? I mean, with such respected members like Professor Jane Duncan, for instance, being part of the panel?
So I think that we're fully ready to read this report on its merits and make an evaluation then about whether we feel that the panel has done the work that it needs to be done. Obviously, as you said, that there are many members of the panel whose work is very respectable. Jane Duncan, you've mentioned, is a well-known expert and obviously also affiliated with the Right to Know campaign, but there's a number of other figures in that panel that are also showing themselves to be people who really are able to do the thinking and work that needs to be done to fix the state security agency. But we can only really begin to have this conversation about whether or not that work has been done when the report is released. And that's why I think it is urgent for the president to actually take steps, especially in light of these latest revelations, to release that report and allow us to engage with it. All right,
Murray, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. That was the spokesperson for the state security agencies, Mr. Murray Hunter. Well, he was reacting to the Minister of State Security, Dipuo Letsatsi Duba, who has actually written to the President about how close protection was offered to the African National Congress Youth League. And, they've been trying to get hold of Colin Maine, and, well, he was not available. So, he's just giving us an update on how the review panel has been doing over the past few days. All right, let's now take a look.